The mess hall at Fort Bragg buzzed with the clatter of trays and low, careless chatter. Soldiers in rumpled camouflage traded insults over chili mac and powdered mashed potatoes, the noise blending into a familiar din. Then, without warning, Specialist Mason Shaw made his move. Broad-shouldered and brimming with swagger, he strode past Staff Sgt. Alex Cross and drove his shoulder into hers. The impact sent her tray spinning. Food exploded across the linoleum with a sharp, metallic crash. For a heartbeat, there was only the skitter of silverware, the crack of plastic, and then silence. Cross didn't react. She rose slowly, deliberately, her back straight, her hands steady. A pale, crescent-shaped scar marked her forearm, newly visible beneath the harsh overhead lights. She turned her head not sharply, not in anger, just enough to meet Shaw's gaze. Her eyes were cold, calculating, like a sniper settling a sight picture. She said nothing. No threats, no heat. Only restraints, absolute, and focused. Then she turned and walked away. The room remained frozen. No laughter followed. No commentary. Staff Sergeant Colin Mercer leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. That wasn't fear. That was control, the kind forged only by experience under fire. Long before she wore a uniform, Alexandra Cross had been shaped into something harder. She grew up in Arizona under the relentless guidance of her father, Daniel Krause, former Green Beret, who believed survival was a skill, not a gift. He taught her to navigate by stars, strip a rifle blindfolded, and fight through pain without hesitation. His lessons were brutal and uncompromising. Never assume help is coming, he told her. You're on your own. By adulthood, Alex was physically resilient, mentally unshakable, and prepared for conflict, military or otherwise. Craving something beyond the ordinary, she enlisted in Army intelligence. Her sharp instincts and composure under pressure set her apart almost immediately. During a training exercise, she identified an enemy signal pattern no one else caught. The find drew attention from a classified Joint Special Operations Command unit. When offered a chance to operate in the shadows, Alex didn't hesitate. She said yes. For 6 years, under the call sign Shadow, she ran clandestine missions alongside Tier 1 Special Operations teams. She wasn't just analyzing data, she was breaching doors, gathering intelligence under fire and surviving in places where mistakes were fatal. In Helmand Province, Afghanistan, in 2021, she faced her crucible. Her 4-person Delta Force team and a high-value informant were surrounded in a remote compound, cut off from support. For 72 brutal hours, they fought to stay alive. Alex intercepted enemy radio traffic, coordinated fires, rationed ammunition and water, and improvised a tourniquet to save a wounded teammate. When relief finally arrived, all 5 Americans in the informant were alive. The intelligence they protected later prevented a major terrorist attack against U.S. forces. Alex left Helmand with a quiet reputation as the team's linchpin and a permanent reminder etched into her flesh. A crescent scar from shrapnel on her forearm. Not long after, victory gave way to loss. Her team leader and mentor, Captain Brooks, was killed by a roadside bomb on a separate mission. His death cut deep. He'd once said the hardest part of war was learning how to be human afterward. Now those words haunted her. Exhausted and grieving, Alex chose to step away. In a discreet arrangement, she was transferred out of JSOC. Her service disappeared into classified files, and she was reassigned as a low-profile training liaison at Fort Bragg. It was meant to be a quieter life. She blended in, a Zila desk, job, paperwork, anonymity. She never spoke about her past, but the habits never left. She always sat with her back to the wall, always scanned exits, always assessed threats. To her peers, she was just another competent but distant admin NCO with a 1,000-yard stare. She intended to stay invisible. Specialist Mason Shaw made sure that didn't happen. At 24, with a sculpted build and a booming voice, Shaw played the part of a hardened warrior. In truth, his 2 overseas deployments had seen little real combat. His insecurity was worsened by the shadow of his older brother, a decorated Green Beret. To compensate, Shaw adopted a simple creed: Loud equals strong. He bullied junior soldiers, flexed in the gym, and relied on intimidation to project authority. When he noticed Staff Sgt Cross quiet, unimpressed, immune to his posturing, something about her refusal to engage enraged him. He tested her with small provocations. A snide comment. A deliberate shoulder check. Each time, Cross responded with calm indifference. To Shar, it felt like defiance. Encouraged by his cronies, Daniels and Harris, he escalated. Jokes turned sharper. Public insults followed. Cross ignored them all. So Shaw chose the mess hall. And failed. Her composure left him exposed. By morning, whispers had spread. No one confronted him, but the look said everything. Shaw burned with humiliation. He wanted a final moment. Public, undeniable. At first light, the gym was nearly empty. Cross moved through strict pull-ups with mechanical precision. Shaw stormed in, chest puffed. "You're in my squad space," he barked. She finished the rep, dropped silently, and gave him a slow, clinical look, measuring, dismissive. Then she walked past him without a word. It rattled him more than any blow could have. Moments later, formation was called. Captain Matthew Briggs addressed the unit calmly. "Some of you have forgotten what discipline means," he said. "I don't believe in lectures. I believe in crucibles." A 3-day field leadership assessment. Volunteers only. Careers would feel the outcome. Then Briggs fixed his eyes on Shaw. "You look like you've got something to prove." Duh. Shaw stepped forward. His friends followed. Then Briggs turned. "Staff Sgt Cross." The formation stirred. "I'm requesting your participation." As a competitor, she nodded once. "Yes, sir." Shaw's jaw dropped. The test began before dawn. 12 miles under load. Shaw charged ahead recklessly. Cross stayed at the rear, conserving energy, moving with efficient precision. By mile 6, Shaw was fading. By mile 12, he staggered and barely standing. Cross arrived moments later, calm, upright, ready for more. The phases that followed only widened the gap. Urban assault planning. Casualty simulations. Chaos by design. When panic erupted, Cross moved. She stabilized wounds, directed fire, gave clear, decisive orders without raising her voice. In under 2 minutes, she had the situation under control. Shaw froze. She corrected him not with mockery, but instruction. And for the first time, he followed. Watching from the rise, the evaluators exchanged looks. "She's been downrange," Ruiz muttered. "No doubt," Mercer replied. By the end, no one needed names spoken. Respect had shifted. Rumors followed. Delta, Ranger, something more. Cross didn't correct them. She simply checked her gear, tightened her straps, stepped into formation as the final evolution began, silent, composed, and ready. Invisible no longer. The terrain offered no mercy. Pine roots twisted across uneven earth, and thick fog cloaked hidden dips and treacherous sinkholes. The squad pressed forward under the dim red glow of their lights, navigating by compass. Every step was a struggle against gravity in sheer exhaustion. Shaw forced himself to the front. He needed to reclaim a sense of leadership. It's a measure of control. "I'll take point," he said, voice hollow but trying to mask uncertainty with authority. No one contested him, not even Cross. But the veteran had no patience for pretense. Twice, Shaw misread the map. First, he led them into a bramble thicket, thorns shredding uniforms and slowing the squad to a crawl. Then he veered nearly 60 degrees off course, dragging the unit into a mosquito-choked marsh, costing precious time. Each time, Cross subtly corrected their path-adjusting azimuth here, guiding along a better contour there. No one argued, and Shaw didn't have the energy to buy. By midnight, they halted in a narrow ravine, damp and boxed in by steep walls. Cross scanned the area. Jaw Teat was a textbook kill zone. If this were real combat, they'd be dead in seconds. She approached Shaw calmly. "Sir," she said quietly, "we might have better visibility if we move up that ridge to the north." Shaw stared for a beat, then nodded. Slowly, almost imperceptibly. Cross assumed the lead, not through rank, not through force, but through quiet authority, by 0300. The unit looked like a scene from a war film, slumped, staggering, eyes sunken. Boots dragged through mud. One private sobbed quietly. Another jerked his head at the trees, whispering, "Did you hear that? Was it the wind?" The cadre had scattered blank fire to keep them on edge. Worked. One soldier refused to move from a mossy stump and was tapped out. Another fell into a shallow creek, arms flailing, until Cross pulled him upright by his straps. By dawn, only 4 remained: Cross, Shaw, and 2 other privates, driven solely by willpower. When ordered to set a defensive perimeter, they were barely upright. Mud-slicked and exhausted, they formed a ragged circle atop a small rise. Shaw muttered half-formed orders before collapsing against a tree. Cross didn't. She fought the urge to rest, flexing her fingers, counting backward from 100. Moving between the others with careful, quiet steps, checking rifles and sightlines. A private nodded off, in prone. She crouched beside him. "Eyes up just a little longer," she whispered. He tried to comply. Another soldier's firing lane needed adjustment. She nudged the barrel 10 degrees to cover a gap. These weren't tactical notes from a manual. This was instinct. Cross returned to her position behind a log. Body screaming for rest, mind swimming, but something deeper than fatigue kept her alert. 1 more hour, then a sound. Almost nothing. A subtle crunch, too deliberate to be wildlife. 2 figures crawled toward the perimeter, ghillie-suited cadre simulating an enemy breach. Cross raised her hand. "Freeze." The privates nearby mirrored her, weapons ready. She flicked her rifle-mounted light on. "Freeze," she said, low, cold, final. The intruders froze mid-crawl, blinking in the sudden brightness. A beat later, one grinned. "Index," he called. Exercise complete. Relief washed over the squad. Shaw stirred, confused. He realized too late that he had slept through the ambush. Cross hadn't hand. She had kept them all alive once again. The walk back to the rally point was quiet. Through gray pre-dawn haze, mud clung to boots, shirts stuck to backs, bones ached. Only 4 of the original 10 made it. Shaw's face was pale, eyes fixed on the ground, shoulders sagging. No bravado remained. Cross looked wrecked, 2 arms limp. Cammies soaked, but she walked straight, posture intact. A private whispered, "How did she do that?" Another shook his head. They had been with her. They had seen it all. And yet, her calm resilience still seemed impossible. For Cross, this wasn't even the worst night she'd endured. As the sun rose, Captain Briggs assembled the remaining soldiers. Beside him stood a woman in a starched army uniform, Colonel Diane Graves. Her ribbons gleamed, her hair steel gray, eyes sharp. The company fell silent. Graves' gaze lingered slightly longer on Cross, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. "Staff Sgt. Cross, front and center," Graves commanded. Cross stepped forward, heart thudding beneath her mud-streaked blouse. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing the crescent-shaped scar on her forearm. Murmurs spread through the ranks. Some recognized it. The scar had been a clue, but the truth was far greater. Graves addressed the formation. "Operation Crosswind, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. 2021. 4-man Special Operations Team, 1 intelligence NCO, trapped in a compound surrounded by over 50 insurgents. For 72 hours, they held that position, defending a high-value source. That intelligence NCO, who coordinated air support, treated the wounded under fire, and repelled multiple assaults. With Staff Sergeant Alexandra Cross, call sign Shadow, gasps rippled through the formation. The quiet, unreadable NCO they'd passed in the hall had fought through hell while most were still in basic training. Cross stood motionless, scar exposed, face unreadable, simply present. Graves continued, recounting Cross's 6 years with JSOC, her deployments, commendations for valor, and training expertise. She saved countless lives in the shadows, far beyond what public records could show. Captain Briggs smiled faintly. Shaw, mud-caked and humbled, stared in disbelief. Graves softened her tone. Sergeant, after everything, why come here quietly? Cross answered firmly, ma'am. I lost my team leader, Captain Brooks, and many others. Before he died, I promised I'd try to live as something other than a weapon. I needed a break from missions that don't officially exist. A ripple of understanding moved through the formation. Graves nodded. Sometimes, we must find our own way to heal. With dawn breaking over the parade field, every soldier saw Cross not as a mystery, but as a warrior, a survivor. Someone worth listening to. Graves announced Cross's new assignment. A permanent position as a combat skills instructor at the Army's elite training school for Benning. Ranger School, combatives, small unit tactics, close quarters battle, survival. Cross felt the weight of her past ease slightly. Her lessons, hard won, would now be passed on, ma'am, she said. Voice steady, it would be an honor. Graves smiled, extended her hand, and Cross shook it firmly to soldiers who understood giving everything and still standing tall. Applause rose, quiet but genuine. Shaw, meanwhile, was quietly reassigned, learning the hard way that respect must be earned, not claimed. By noon, whispers of Cross's true past had spread. She walked the halls with new recognition, nods of respect, quiet acknowledgement. She remained the same, calm, efficient, and disciplined. Her scars were no longer secrets, they were lessons. Days later, at Fort Benning, Cross stood before 24 fresh-faced soldiers on the combatives' mat. I've been in places most people don't come back from, she said evenly. My job isn't to impress you. It's to make sure you don't freeze when everything goes to hell. She signaled them to gear up. She didn't lead from the shadows anymore. She led from the front, turning experience into instruction, pain into purpose, and silence into a story worth hearing. Alexandra. Shadow Cross reminded everyone, the quietest presence often carries the deepest strength. Discipline, clarity, and purpose outshine bravado every time. Respect is earned, action by action.